strategy and culture are the two most abused words in the corporate sector. An organization without people does not even make sense. Right? When you're playing a game, you need to play the game by its rules. And one thing which makes or breaks a career in startups is your ability to adapt. If something is changing every week, right? In terms of कि अच्छा आज ये priority है, एक हफ्ते बाद कुछ और priority है, 2 हफ्ते बाद कुछ और priority है, then it gives me an indication that maybe people are not sure what they're building and what they're doing, right? That could be a red flag. Don't be comfortable if you don't have enough work. Please go ask, seek more work. That is what is going to differentiate you as a professional. AI is going to replace human beings or replace HR for that matter. I think taking it too far. The generation which is now coming in, they want to keep a balance between the three of these, or maybe at least the two, which is themselves and the career. Only thinking about your career and profession at the cost of your own health, I think is taking it too far.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Growthcast podcast. And today I have with me Saurabh Nigam, who is a seasoned HR leader. He is the writer of the book People Powered Startups and also founder and CEO of ProGrowth People Solution. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for taking out time, and it's great to host you here.
Thank you, Shashank. Thank you for inviting me over. I am actually looking forward to this conversation. A big fan of your of your profile and of your community which you built out.
Thank you so much. And I think a lot of working professionals follow the pace. So today's episode will also give them their nuggets of wisdom that they can use in their professional life. So I'll start with asking how has been your professional journey and what are some of the pivots that you have made through this journey?
Sure. So Shashank, I'm an engineer by background, by my graduation background. I did my few years of coding before deciding to do an MBA and specialize in HR. So that was the first pivot I made. From being an engineer, from being a coder to taking the leap to be an HR professional. And for last 17, 18 years, I've been an HR professional in the space of people practices. Started with large Indian conglomerate, Aditya Birla Group. And was fortunate to start my career with ABG with their retail business. In fact, I was part of the team. I joined the business or joined that company when we had not even opened even a single store, more store, right? So that was my and obviously I had no role to play in that. I just got placed there, but that was my first flavor of what it takes to be part of an organization which is building out rather than being built already, right? And that's quite exhilarating, right? It's almost like having an option to either stay in a large mansion or actually having the opportunity to build a mansion of your own, right? So that build mode is when what I experienced right very, very early on in my HR career, building an organization from ground up and playing a role there. And that excited me, right? And honestly, post that, actually, I've remained in the startup ecosystem. I have worked with a variety of organizations, led HR for Snapdeal, Bero, also led human capital for Omedia Network, which was an impact investment firm. So I've played the role of a HR professional both on the operating side as well as on the investor side, and have pretty much seen the entire landscape, right? So it's really the next pivot for me to came in when last year I decided to venture out on my own and set up ProGrowth People Solutions. That's it, and the idea was very clear that startup ecosystem requires very unique differentiated people practices which are fast, which are nimble, which are in line with the context of the organization working in that space. Having worked in this space for 16, 17 years, I wanted to bring that as an expertise, as a service offering to the startup ecosystem. And that's how ProGrowth People Solution was born, right? So we have multiple service lines, right from fractional CHRO to bespoke HR interventions, hiring, coaching, compliances, all of them directed towards the startups, right? So that's what we do, and that's my latest pivot for last 1 year. And in between, I also took some time to write this book called People Powered Startups. Again, talking about the book really talks about HR practices, people practices in startups for startups, has a lot of case studies in it. Basically, whatever I've learned over the last 16, 17, 18 years has gone into this book. So that was a small pivot which I made last year to write the book as well. And this is where I am now.
I've gone through the book and I think you have given some great insights. One thing that I wanted to understand from you that is startups do a lot to attract talent, but do you feel that they are doing enough to retain the talent as well because attrition rates are generally very high?
Great point, and I always say this, Shashank, that if an organization is a funnel, right, we invariably spend a lot of time at the top of the funnel, which is hiring, right? To
Right.
get people into that funnel, right? Fill that funnel up, right? Because if the funnel is filled out, only then that funnel has any meaning, right?
Right.
An organization without people does not even make sense, right? And that's why a lot of focus has over the years has been on getting the team right, getting the people into the organization, getting your hiring right. And I'm not saying it's not important, but to me that is the easier part of building the organization or building a strong organization, right? Because once you have got the funnel filled out, what you do within that funnel to ensure that that funnel remains intact or filled out for a longer duration of time rather than people flowing out of it, or the is really where the challenge is, right? Now how do you do that is really the differentiates a great organization from a good organization. And you're absolutely right. I think many organizations have yet to crack that piece, which is what do you do once people are into the organization? How do you create an ecosystem of retaining people, people wanting to stay with you, wanting to be part of the journey to build out that organization and see how that mansion looks like, right? I think that is where uh, a lot of work still needs to be done for sure.
Got it. And do you feel that this is also slightly because क्योंकि initially आपके पास कोई HR dedicated team नहीं होती, तो it is founder and their mindset only, so it creates all of these challenges because people generally ये वाली चीज थोड़े later stage पे set करते हैं, and that is where all the difference between a good and a great organization comes in.
Oh yeah. So here is the thing, right? Um, if your entire focus is just to get people in so that they can start moving, right? You're essentially treating people as nothing but just a pair of hands, right? And
Right.
I know I'm just making it look very transactional here, but you need to understand that every human being, every team member who comes into the organization has a mind of his or her own, has
Right.
aspirations, has expectations. Uh, and you as a leader need to be aware about the fact that unless you do things, you align your people towards that common goal, common objective, you're not building a great organization, right? I often say that individually we all have our own paths, right? And it doesn't matter what path I am taking versus what path Shashank is taking, what path XYZ is taking, right? But the moment we come together into an organization, into a team, into a funnel, right, then it has to be a common objective. It has to be
Right.
common goal. And all of us have to be excited about it, right? How do you generate that excitement? How do you make sure that people are excited about building a really massively beautiful organization? Is where the leadership comes, your leadership skills comes into the fact, right? Leadership is way beyond just letting the person know what he or she is supposed to be doing, or reviewing their performance. Leadership goes way beyond that, right? And I think as a founder, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, I've always say that one eye has to be on that piece, which is what are you doing to make sure that people are aligned and excited about building this up with you, along with you.
Got it. And you talked
Either
a
you
lot
do it
about.
yourself, or you have a thought partner who works alongside to for you to build it out.
राइट एंड आपने बुक में एयरबीएनबी का काफी मेंशन किया है, सो वुड लाइक टू शेयर कि व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट दे हैव डन डिफरेंटली व्हिच हैज सेट देम अप फॉर सक्सेस.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about Airbnb, right? When it started off as a concept, people laughed at it, right? Who's gonna rent out their apartment, and who's gonna pick up that apartment to say, okay, fine, I'm gonna live there when there are enough and more hotel chains out there, right? But then they actually have created a category out of it, and obviously they like the front and center of co-living spaces and stuff like that. But if I look at how they built out the entire narrative of what they are looking to do, how they're creating a unique category, how they're opening up the entire travel segment itself, how they're making it accessible for people to go to places where possibly the hotel chains itself are not there, right?
Right.
I think that's where they what they made sure was that this their messaging made it aspirational for people, for talent, for professional to say, hey, listen, they're doing something different, they're doing something unique, and I would like to be part of that journey, right? And then that becomes a starting point, because then there is a stickiness, right? Then what happens is when people are coming in with that excitement of building something unique, something different, then they remain with you, right? Then they're not so fixated about why I'm not getting a 20% hike, why XYZ is not, why there's no remote working for that matter. So in my mind, what Airbnb did beautifully well was to create this aspiration in the minds of working professionals across different segments about creating something which is unique, which is differentiated, which became so aspirational for everybody that they wanted to stick around. And then obviously that became a starting point. Once you were inside the organization, they've done a lot of work around employee engagement and how they treated people with dignity, with respect, with openness, with transparency. All of that has ensured that it's a great place to work with, and they built out the organization the way they have actually.
Got it. And sort of a lot of follower base generally keep on texting messaging कि अभी workplace में everything is toxic but अभी opportunity नहीं मिल रही, so we are
हाँ,
not planning to move out. So
हाँ,
if
हाँ,
somebody is stuck in this situation where they know कि अभी movement is difficult and workplace is also a difficult place to be in, so what are some of the tips that you would like to give to them कि they should deploy
हाँ,
at least for the time being?
या सो मैं ना शशांक इसको टू पार्ट्स में आंसर करूंगा, राइट?
Right,
आई ऑलवेज से दिस, व्हेन यू आर प्लेइंग अ गेम, राइट, you need to play the game by its rules,
right,
right? So if you are inside a game, if you are into a field, you can't say, "Yeah, I'll play cricket by following the rules of football." Just cannot happen, right?
right,
Now, if you don't like the rules of that game, then you have two options, three options rather, right? One option is simple: change the game. I don't like cricket. Okay, go play football. Your option, right? You have that choice, right? Now, suppose you're not able to do that, the question which you asked me, you don't have the option to change the game just as yet, right? Or change the job just as yet. Then you're left with two options. One, please understand and start playing the game by that rules itself, right? What that means is understand what works in that organization. It may not be to your liking, it may not be to your value system, it may not be aligned to your principle, but you need to play by that, right?
right.
And again, I'm going to maybe sensationalize that. A lot of people say politics, for example. Fundamentally, I don't think politics is wrong, right? I mean, there's a subject called, or there's a science called political science, right? So how
Political
could that
science,
be
right,
wrong, right? But if you get the drift I'm coming from, so if you say, hey, there's a lot of politics here, right? You need to be on the right side of the manager to be able to sustain in this organization. Yeah, please do that then, right? Because you have decided to play that game because you don't have an option to play any other game just as yet. You don't have any other
right,
organization to go to, but you need to understand what works in that organization, learn that and do it, right? Because if you don't do that, then you'll be frustrated, right? Then
right,
you're basically under. Last thing which you can do, therefore, so either you do that. Suppose you said, "No, I'm not going to do it." Then what you should know is what is expected out of your role, bare minimum to stay afloat, okay?
right,
And do that much while making sure that you're figuring out the other game where you'll switch on, right? What you should definitely not do is don't do anything,
right.
because because then it will become extremely miserable for you, because then maybe somebody will push you out of that game itself then.
Right, right. And Saurabh, I think throughout your journey you might have came across profiles of people you might have worked with जो आपको लगता होगा कि यार ये तो काफी different है दूसरे से and they have an unfair advantage over other just because of the sheer grit or determination that they bring to the table.
Right.
So what is one differentiating factor that you have seen between good candidates and great candidates? वो क्या एक चीज होती है जो उनको differentiate करती है बाकियों से?
Yeah, so honestly, there are many, Shashank. Because you asked one, I'll give you one. If I have to, and okay, let me put it this way. My book also says this, okay, that one of the myths is that hiring for skills is not important. Hiring for culture fit or alignment is more important. I don't agree to that, by the way. Okay, मेरे हिसाब से skill is hygiene, skill is foundation, right? So if I'm looking to hire a Java developer, उसको Java आना चाहिए, right? If
Mhm.
I'm looking to hire an HR guy, उसको HR पता होना चाहिए, skills चाहिए. Once I'm convinced that, okay, two of us, for example, if we both were looking for the same role, once I'm convinced that both these candidates are equally good when it comes to skill, that's when I will look at other things, which are values and fitment to culture. Within that, now I'm going to give you only one thing which for me, which I index heaviest on. For me, that is learning agility. Okay, there are many more things which I look at, but learning agility for me is the biggest thing, because if you have the learning agility, if you have the attitude to learn new things, learn different things, learn about your own subject, learn about things which are adjacent to you, then you'll find a way. Then you'll navigate and find a way to do things and be successful. So to me, that's one thing. So you as a candidate, if the candidate is not able to convince me that he or she is excited about learning new things, it takes the initiative to learn new things on his or her own, is not dependent on company funding your training needs and learning needs, and can showcase that to me, that to me is a big plus here.
या आई थिंक कई बार लोग सौरभ रिजिड हो जाते हैं अपने थॉट प्रोसेस के साथ कि दिस इज द वे द थिंग्स गेट डन एंड ऐसे ही होती आई हैं एंड वी हैव सीन सक्सेस इस तरह के पर्टिकुलर प्रोसेस से देन इट बिकम्स रियली डिफिकल्ट टू कन्विंस देम।
Exactly. And that's where the second thing comes in, which is learning agility along with adaptability. Right?
राइट,
You need to adapt. I mean, see, I've been in startups for long enough now, and one thing which makes or breaks a career in startups is your ability to adapt. Because
राइट,
startups will change, right? Business plans will change, and things will move very, very fast. You just can't say कि यार, आपने मेरे को तो अब बताया था कि मुझे ये करना है, अब आप 2 महीने बाद बोल रहे हो अब कुछ और करना है. How can I do that? You cannot do that. So adaptability and learning agility are two absolute critical things which you need to have to be able to build a strong career, not just in startups. I believe everywhere you go.
गॉट इट। एंड सौरभ, यू आर पार्ट ऑफ स्नैपडील जब उस टाइम क्रेजी ग्रोथ हो रही थी इंडिया ई कॉम इंडस्ट्री में। सो कैन यू वॉक अस थ्रू दोज डेज कि वहां तब कैसे हायरिंग दिखती थी, हाउ वाज
Oh, yeah,
कंपनी ग्रोइंग और किस तरह के चैलेंजेस आ रहे थे उस टाइम पे?
yeah, Shashank. So I joined Snapdeal in April 2014. And
हम्म,
if I recollect correctly, I think we were about 600, 700 member organization at that point of time.
राइट,
Uh, and between April 2014 to March 2015, we grew to almost 7,000 member organization, right? So it was like 10x, more than 10x.
राइट, राइट,
This was the period when, as you rightly said, there was a big growth, massive growth happening in e-commerce. SoftBank had funded Snapdeal somewhere around, I think, August of 2014, if I'm not wrong. Massive inflow of funding which was happening. Flipkart was doing well, really well as well. Amazon was coming into the country. I still fondly remember those days. It was a heady feeling because everybody used to talk about e-commerce as the next sunrise industry in the country. And it
राइट,
was, right? I mean, compared to what it was, how things were in e-commerce in 2014 versus now, it's everywhere, right? I mean, e-commerce, if you really look at it. And I think being part of that journey at that point of time when things were getting created, I remember the big Diwali sales happened for the first time in 2014, both at Snapdeal and Flipkart. And while it was a big success purely from a transactions which happened, but what followed was a big nightmare from a supply chain logistics perspective because we had not anticipated, that yeah, people will order, right, when you give big
राइट,
discounts, and but you need to fulfill those orders as well, and supply chain just got clogged. So there were huge amount of learnings as well. And during this growth phase, Shashank, what really happened was, the 600, 700 people going up to 7,000 people, we were hiring across very diverse roles, right? So we were hiring techies on one side, we were hiring customer service associates on the other side, we were hiring marketing folks on one end, we were hiring supply chain guys on the other side. All very different skill set, all very different ecosystem from where we had to hire. And back in 2014, there wasn't really a playbook of how to run HR or how to run people practices in e-commerce. Okay.
राइट,
It was very new, right? So we had to figure out ways. So if you had to hire, for example, in supply chain, there wasn't really okay, there are these e-commerce companies, go hire from there. No, we had to figure out, okay, where do we look for, right? What
राइट,
are the target segments of candidates, of organizations, of industries where we can look for those kind of talent who can come in and work on the supply chain side and e-commerce, right? So there was a lot of learnings as well. And that's why I said learning agility was really important for us to, and when I say us, I'm talking about my own self, I'm talking about my entire team, which I had built out during that period of time, for us to be able to crack that and, enable the growth of the
आई
organization.
थिंक अ लॉट ऑफ न्यू रोल्स यू गाइस ओनली क्रिएटेड, जैसे कैटेगरी मैनेजर पहले उतना ज्यादा फैंसी रोल था नहीं, आफ्टर 2013-14 नाउ इट हैज बिकेम अ मेन स्ट्रीम रोल। उसी तरह फिर ऑप्स के भी बहुत सारे रोल्स दैट वर क्रिएटेड इन
Yeah,
2013-14 इटसेल्फ।
yeah, absolutely. So that was a heady feeling, right? So to be a part of that journey where you're almost creating something new, something different,
राइट,
which has now become mainstream. I mean, but it required a lot of agility, a lot of adaptability. Also, we made a lot of mistakes as well. I won't deny. The analogy which I keep using for that period of 1 year is that we were trying to change the wheels of a car.
राइट,
The challenge was that the car was not going to stop. Car was moving at 100 miles an hour, and we had to change the tires of the car. Right, so that was
राइट।
the challenge.
एंड सौरभ, व्हाट जनरली हैपेंस व्हेन यू ब्रिंग इन सो मेनी फोक्स फ्रॉम डाइवर्स बैकग्राउंड, तो कल्चर पे क्या हिट आता है एंड डज दैट रिफ्लेक्ट इन डे टू डे वर्किंग ऑफ द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन एज वेल?
100%, 100% it does. Right. So you put two people together, and there will be a certain kind of culture which will emerge, right? And by the way, I refrain from using culture a lot, a culture word a lot, because I do believe that strategy and culture are the two most abused words in the corporate sector. I
राइट,
define culture as nothing but ways of working, right?
राइट,
Any organization, any team will have its own ways of working. And ways of working is nothing but what's okay and what's not okay to do in an organization. or in a team, right? Now, as a leader, as a founder, you have an option to define what's okay and what's not okay. When you work together, when you come and work in an organization which I'm trying to set up, it's okay to call out mistakes openly, right? It's okay to question, it's okay to push back. It's not okay to raise your voice, whether in public or in private, right? Very simple examples, but as a leader, it is your responsibility to define what's okay and what's not okay. And eventually, that's what leads to become the culture of the organization, right?
Right.
Now, when you're growing, right, when you're growing at such a rapid pace, even if you define it, how do you make sure that it's getting percolated across the entire organization, right? Every single person who's coming into the organization understands what are the ways of working in this organization. It becomes very challenging because, and it was a challenge for us at Snapdeal back then as well, because our almost 100% of our focus was to build the team out, right?
Right.
uh, but I think very quickly we realized that getting the team in is just one part of the puzzle. We had to keep a focus on, or bring a focus on, building out the culture, making sure that everybody understands what's okay and what's not okay, what are the ways of working. And in order to do that, one, we first had to define it for ourselves. So
Right.
we spent a lot of time doing that once we had, built out a team of a certain size and scale. But it is a challenge. There is no doubt about the fact that, and that's why I say, by the way, that hiring is comparatively easier, but getting those people to align with each other and be focused and excited about the overall goal and the objective of the organization is a much tougher thing to do.
राइट आई थिंक करेक्टली सेड जो कल्चर फिट लोग वर्ड यूज करते हैं उसकी जगह मे बी वेज ऑफ वर्किंग फिट इज अ बेटर एनालॉगी कि आप उसको यूज करके
हाँ, आप
बेटर
समझा दो यार कि listen, हमारे यहाँ पे, like I say this a lot of times, that I mean, all this discussion around 70-hour work week,
90
90-hour work week, I refrain. I've never written about it. I refrain from that. I think because to me it's all contextual, right? I mean, yeah, there are organizations I know who work longer hours, who hustle, right? Because leader himself hustles because they're quite excited and motivated about what they're building. If you sign up, you're signing up for that world, or signing up for that game, as I said right earlier on in this
राइट
podcast. Now, as a leader, as a founder, it is my responsibility to make sure that the person understands before that person signs up that this is how we work, right?
राइट
This is our ways of working, right? Uske baad, if somebody has signed up, they have signed up to play that game. They've signed up to be part of that journey. And I know enough and more organizations, Shashank, I know enough and more professions who are happily doing that because they are excited about what they're creating, what they're building, right?
राइट
But I think it's important as a leader for you to articulate what are your ways of working going to be in the organization, and make sure that the individuals understand that before they actually sign up for it.
Right. And Saurabh, there is lot of chatter and talk around bell curve. Ki no matter what you do, certain set of people will fit in at top of this bell curve and certain people will fit at bottom. So if somebody is a working professional watching this video, what are two or three things that they can do to ensure कि इस bell curve के bottom में नहीं है?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not a believer or a firm believer of bell curve, right? I mean,
Right,
it's a mathematical concept. If I'm not wrong, it's a probability concept or statistics concept, right?
mm,
You can't possibly fit people into a statistical curve, right? That's what
right,
I totally believe in. However, I do believe that there has to be a correlation between the performance of a team, performance of an organization, and performance of individuals, right?
right,
You can't say, and just as an example, you can't have a situation where your bowlers are not bowling well, your batsmen are not scoring runs, your wicket keeper is dropping catches, and that team wins the World Cup. Just cannot
right,
happen. Reverse, make it, you cannot be in a situation where your team has won the World Cup and you don't have a single batsman who has scored heavily, you don't have a single bowler who has bowled really well, you have taken catches. Just cannot happen. So definitely there is a correlation between the performance of the team and the performance of the organization and the overall performance of the team members, right?
right,
They say, right, the strength of the wolf is the strength pack, and the strength of the pack is the strength of the wolf, right? A team
right,
is as good as the team members, right? So that goes without saying. I'm not saying that at all. Now, but can it be, should it be like 15% on this side, 15% on here, and then the 70% on top? I think it's just too redundant a system to follow, right? It just makes
right,
it too straitjacket. I don't believe in that. It just cannot happen. But having said that, what I do believe in, that there should be a very strong performance system which evaluates that, okay, what is it that is required of you to do in order, and how what you're doing contributes to the success of the organization, right? And I fundamentally believe you can do that for any function, any organization, or any role. right?
Right.
People say that, "Oh, it's very easy to define it for sales, very difficult to do it for HR." No, I don't believe that. I've been an HR professional enough number of years. You can define exactly what you need to be doing and what your success measures are and how it adds up to the success of the organization. If you're able to do that, and if you're able to objectively then assess and evaluate the performance of the individual correlated to the performance of the organization, you don't need to do the force fitment of bell curve.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now you didn't ask me that question. What you really asked me, that as an individual, what you need to do to be on the right side of the bell
Mhm.
curve, right? And I think, without getting too philosophical about it, I think what you should do as a professional is clearly understand what is expected out of you and your role, right?
Right.
And then put your head down and make sure that you hit the ball out of the park. It's as simple as that. There's nothing more to it, right?
Right.
Now, in order to do that, yes, you need to be you need to have the ability to have conversations with your leaders, with your managers, with your team leads. If you have challenges, you should be able to talk about it. If there's a certain degree of support which you need, you should be able to talk about it. All of that, absolutely, it's in your hand, right? Do not leave it to chance. Do not leave it to someone else to figure out what you need, what your challenges are. The responsibility is yours, right?
Right.
That's what I always say to a fresher coming into an organization, or a leader as well, that please take that ownership of yours, of asking for help if you need yourself, rather than waiting for someone else to figure it out, because ultimately it's your role, it's your career, it's your performance which will matter, right? If you're able to do that, I think there is no reason why you will not be on the right side of the curve. That's really how it is.
राइट राइट वेरी करेक्टली टोल्ड बिकॉज आई कीप ऑन कंडक्टिंग दीज रिज्यूमे वर्कशॉप तो उसमें यही सेम क्वेश्चन आता है कि कोई सेल्स में होगा तो वो क्वांटिफाई कर देगा रेवेन्यू नंबर को बट इफ यू आर फ्रॉम द एचआर बैकग्राउंड या इफ यू आर सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर तो क्वांटिफिकेशन तो पॉसिबल ही नहीं है यू कीप ऑन टेलिंग अस की करो तो मैं वही समझाता हूँ कि क्वांटिफिकेशन तो टाइम का भी हो सकता है एफिशिएंसी का भी हो सकता है
Yeah,
प्रोसेस का भी हो सकता है सो देयर मल्टीपल
किसी
थिंग्स
के भी
यू
हो
कैन
सकता
मेंशन इन योर रिज्यूमे
है।
सो इट्स नॉट लाइक कि केवल रेवेन्यू नंबर ला दोगे तभी दिखेगा कि यू आर एबल टू
Yeah,
क्वांटिफाई
वो बहुत wrong notion actually, to be honest. And you're right. I'm glad that you're helping people to make sure that they put this into their CVs and profiles, because as you rightly said, I firmly believe that सक्सेस मेजर तो हर रोल का होता है यार, हर रोल का
राइट
सक्सेस मेजर है।
एंड आई थिंक आपने वो भी बहुत अच्छा बताया बिकॉज यू नीड टू क्लियरली कम्युनिकेट जैसे आई ऑल्सो कीप ऑन टॉकिंग कि अगर आप हो और आपको चाहिए कि इस बार मेरे को प्रमोशन चाहिए सो एटलीस्ट यू नीड टू मेक श्योर कि स्किप मैनेजर से आप वंस इन अ क्वार्टर तो मिल ही रहो वो अलाइनमेंट खुद ही आपको बिल्ड करना पड़ेगा देयर विल बी नोबडी एल्स इन द ऑफिस
हाँ,
जो आपके लिए बैटिंग करेगा या दे विल गो अहेड एंड
yeah,
टॉक
yeah,
अबाउट यू
yeah. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it.
Right. And Saurabh, we have also seen instances जहाँ पे startups have scaled very fast, फिर downsize भी बहुत ही faster way में करते हैं. So why this situation comes and as a HR leader, what's your take on this?
Yeah.
कि अगर किसी को hiring करनी है, तो वो क्या सोच के क्या certain metrics देख के ही they should be scaling up their teams.
Yeah, so I have written about this in my book, okay,
Right,
in
right,
multiple chapters, right? So there is a chapter, I think chapter 22, or I think, or 23, where I've talked about the mistakes, which HR mistakes, which you make as an organization, as a startup, right? And one of the
right,
mistakes is around the fact that, and I've seen this play out in many places, where you end up believing that a growth in business or business metrics is linearly correlated to growth in team and team size, right?
right,
Essentially what I'm saying is कि यार अगर 10x growth करनी है, x to 10x जाना है from a revenue perspective, I need to move my team from x to 10x. Like, if invariably it doesn't happen like that, right? Because if you are scaling your teams like that, you are discounting things like productivity gains, you're discounting things like skill enhancement, you're discounting things like what happens when people spend more time in the organization and understand the organization and the ways of working of the organization a little better. You're discounting all of those things the moment you start scaling your organization linearly as you're scaling the growth, or as you're scaling your business itself. And that's where
right,
invariably you end up hiring more, right? You end up hiring more, and the moment you end up hiring more, there are redundancies which gets created, right? You start having overlap in your roles, right? You start having realizing that span of controls has become way too big for your managers, right? Most importantly, you start realizing that your fixed cost has gone out of the room, right? uh, so one advice which I always give and I personally follow is that understanding what is your org design principles, right? I've been a coder long time back, but I've been a coder. You are an engineer yourself, right, Shashank, if I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
and you've done coding as well, if I'm not wrong,
हाँ, in Accenture I was a software developer.
right? Before you write the first line of code, what do? You put the design, right? चाहे आपने flow chart बनाया हो, चाहे आपने notes में
Right,
अपने design flow बनाया हो, but you put the design or an architecture before you write the code. You start writing the code.
Right.
correct? Right. And the reason for that is because that design then tells you that how your code should flow, right? What are the loops you will make, what are the logic you will create. Same thing applies on organizations, right? So before you start putting in your rather start bringing in people, right, in different functions, in different roles, at different levels, you need to have a design in place, your org design in place, which should tell you that given the growth trajectory, given the growth or a product roadmap of your organization, how should your organization should move, how should your organization design should look like over next 6, 12, 18 months, right? What are the different roles you will need, what in what numbers, who will report to what, what will be the hierarchy within the organization, what will be the demarcation of roles and responsibility, to make sure that there are no redundancies, that make sure there are no overlaps. All those questions needs to be answered, which is what org design is all about, before you say, okay, now let me hire for these roles, right?
Right.
So once you do that, invariably you'll not end up over hiring, okay, because you have
Right.
a design in mind, right? And you're just fulfilling those design by hiring the people to fill those roles in.
Right. I think completely resonated with this part because I also hired few interns for the page, and I think वो बहुत ही random मैंने भी यही किया था कि जैसे जैसे requirement आई थी was keep on putting it, but while you are speaking now I understand कि वो थोड़ा thought process
You need to
initially
visualize.
देना पड़ेगा so that
Yeah, yeah,
when it is means you know कि यही मेरा fundamental है, इससे इधर तो आगे पीछे मुझे जाना नहीं है, otherwise you
yeah.
will randomly keep on hiring.
Correct. So Shashank, like yesterday we were talking, right? So jitna mujhe samajh mein aaya, you have this page, you have communities now, right? And you have vision to grow this, right? And you have vision to
Right.
do multiple things. And I was listening to this. If I were to partner with you, what we should do then, or what you should definitely do is that, given this vision, right? Then ask yourself, okay, what is the timeline I'm talking about? I'm talking about 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is, right? I
Right.
need to build out these different aspects in the ecosystem which I'm building out. In order
Right.
to do this, I need this skill set. In order to do that, I need this skill set, right? Do I have that skill set already with me, within myself or within the team I have? If I don't have, then build a role for that, right?
Right.
And then use that to then articulate, okay, how many people, right? If I want to say build a community of 10 million subscribers or 10 million users, right? Right now I'm at 1 million. What would it take, right? I need somebody to drive community engagement. I need somebody to drive, engagement. I need somebody to do some digital marketing and all of that. I'm just,
Right.
you know this better than me, honestly, right? But these are the questions which we need to answer for ourselves to then say, okay, if this is my vision, this is the skill set I need.
Right.
This is therefore the roles I need, and therefore then I'll go and hire.
Right. हाँ, it's not like कि hire कर लिया फिर figure out कर रहे हो कि अब किसको क्या काम देना है.
वो नहीं
Right.
होएगा.
Saurabh, I'll also like to touch base from the candidate's point of view. What are certain red flags that they should be aware of if they are joining an organization or working in an organization that can give them a fair idea that now it's time to move out?
Uh, at the time of hiring itself, or once they're inside the organization?
Once they are inside, क्या red flags हैं that people
For
should be
sure.
aware of? Hmm.
Okay. So once you're inside the organization, right, there are few things which you should keep aware about, right? One is the coherence of what was played out to you in terms of what we are trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, the overall goals and the mission of the organization, and the path towards that, right? Now, I'm not saying that it should not change. A lot of in the startup, especially, things will change, right? But how frequently these things are changing, right? If something is changing every week, right? In terms of कि अच्छा आज ये priority है, एक हफ्ते बाद कुछ और priority है, 2 हफ्ते बाद कुछ और priority है, then it gives me an indication that maybe people are not sure what they're building and what they're doing, right? That could be
Right.
a red flag. Second red flag, as at a very personal level, is when you realize that okay, not enough work is flowing to you. That's a
Hmm.
big red flag. अगर मेरे पास काम नहीं आ रहा है ना, अगर मैं खाली बैठा हूँ, okay, there are two things which is happening. Either there is not enough work in the organization itself. That's a red flag, right? Or there is enough more work in the organization, but they are not giving to you, your manager is not giving to you because they don't have the confidence that you can do it. Both are red flags for me.
Right.
Okay. So if you are sitting idle, okay, if you don't have, and you, it's very easy to judge that. You don't need anybody else to tell you that. If you don't see that enough work is coming your way, meaningful work, impactful work, you're sitting way too idle, don't get comfortable, because to me that's the biggest red flag.
Right. Right.
Okay. Third, I would say, is really about the fact that and it's almost like a no-brainer when you see a lot of people moving out of the organization, right,
Hmm.
at different levels, right?
Right.
Senior at senior level, people moving out of the organization, that's a definite red flag because there's something wrong happening.
Got it. I think this is very helpful for the audience क्योंकि most of these folks are also working in startups. तो अगर आप ये minute observations करते रहते हो तो आपको at the end of the year शॉक नहीं लगेगा कि यार
हाँ,
ये
हाँ,
रेटिंग कैसे आ गई या ये ले
बिल्कुल।
ऑफ के डिस्कशंस क्यों हो रहे हैं
मैं
यहाँ
मतलब
पे।
मैं लोगों को ये बोलता हूँ कि सी एंड आई थिंक यू शुड प्रोपोगेट दिस इन योर कम्युनिटी गिवन सच अ बिग कम्युनिटी यू रन कि डोंट बी कंफर्टेबल इफ यू डोंट हैव इनफ वर्क. Please go
राइट।
ask, seek more work. That is what is going to differentiate you as a professional, right? And after seeking, if you're not getting work, तो फिर बहुत बड़ा रेड फ्लैग है फिर.
हाँ, it means कि there are some questions on your credibility and you need to
या तो
counter.
आपकी क्रेडिबिलिटी में क्वेश्चन मार्क है या देयर इजंट इनफ वर्क इन द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन इटसेल्फ. बोथ आर रेड.
हाँ, right, right. Saur, would you like to talk about the business that you are currently building in? What are the services that are being offered and how you are basically helping out startups in their journey?
Sure,
Mm.
sure. Absolutely, Shashank. So, Shashank, ProGrowth People Solution, when we started off last year, our idea was to create a platform where we could offer HR leadership expertise to the startup ecosystem, because many times over, I've seen that the startups do realize and understand the need to build HR practices and people practices, but the reason they're not able to build it out is because they don't have the right talent in place, right leader
Right,
in place to be able to do that. And why they don't have the right leader in this to come and work alongside them is to either because they've not defined what that expertise or HR leadership expertise looks like, or if they've defined it, they don't have enough resources to pull that or rather get that person on board, right? And that's the gap which we wanted to fill by bringing in the fractional CHRO service which we have, which is our flagship service at ProGrowth People Solutions, where people like me and we've got bunch of others folks with us. We've been in the HR startup ecosystem for many years, so have been there, done that, understand the space. What we bring to the table is HR leadership expertise to help you build your people practices, HR practices. And
right.
because we're doing it in a fractional manner, it comes at a price point which is more affordable for startups, right?
What
So,
is fractional CHRO or CMO? अगर आप audience को थोड़ा सा define कर पाएंगे,
ah,
what kind of roles are these and what are the responsibilities of someone
sure.
who joins as a fractional CHRO or CMO in an
Sure.
organization?
So at our end, for example, if you look at it, I play the role of fractional CHR. What that means is I am the HR head for an organization, but I am not 100% fully devoted to that organization, right? So I give a fraction of my time to that organization to lead their HR function. All right.
Right,
But in that fraction of time, it could be 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, one day a week kind of an arrangement, right? What I'm trying to do is I'm using that time to then understand the need of the organization and run the HR agenda for them, right?
right,
And why I'm able to do this by giving a fraction of a time, or why anybody from my team is able to do it, is because uh, that's enough for us to be able to build the capabilities, the HR
right,
capabilities, right?
right,
That's why it's fractional. And because we are doing it on a fractional basis, I'm not committing, or we are not committing our 100% time to a particular organization, our cost also becomes fractional, right, compared to
got it.
what. So if the market is paying someone from my team for a full-time HR head role, say 100 rupees, and this person now works as a fractional CHRO for an organization where this person is giving, say, half of his or her time, you end up paying 50, not 100, to this person, right? So that
Right.
becomes that much more affordable for the organization.
Right.
So
And you get right talent and skill set also जो आपको day zero से you can start leveraging because if you
exactly,
bring someone from outside, they will take quite some time to
exactly.
gain those skills, right?
Exactly. That's where it comes in. And we're talking about people who've been in this ecosystem. So that learning curve is in there, right? We can pretty much get moving from day one, right? That's the advantage you get by engaging with us from on our fractional CHRO services, which we have, which is our flagship service. Then we have the other vertical, which we call as the HR interventions. We've identified about 23 different HR interventions across different areas of HR, like performance systems, OKRs, compensation strategy, ESOP design. These are various HR interventions which any organization would need depending on the stage of evolution they are in. We pick those interventions and design and deliver to our clients in a project mode. right? So it could be a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month project, depending on the scope of the project across different interventions, and we deliver. So that's the second vertical which we have. Third one, the vertical which we have is what we call as our hiring practice. So we have a hiring practice because all startups, as I said, top of the funnel needs to be solved.
Right.
You need to bring in the team. So we have a team which caters to the hiring or other supports our clients towards their hiring practices. Fourth vertical which we have is what we call as our leadership coaching and leadership development practice. So as organization scales, right, a lot of times there's interventions around learning, development, coaching which is required, and that's where this
Right.
vertical comes in. And the fifth one is around compliances, right? So as organizations scale, you need to have a very keen eye on making sure that you're compliant when it comes to labor
Right.
laws and various things. Otherwise, they can pull you down, right? So we have a
Right.
fifth vertical which caters to that. Essentially, the idea is that anything which you need from running or setting up and running your people practices, HR practices in your organization, we have the ability to take care of it while you focus on the overall growth of the organization as a leader, as a CEO, or as a founder. That's what we
Right.
do as an organization.
Yeah. Got it. I think basically it's a management consulting firm focused on your HR practices only that you're trying to carve out. But if I talk about your focus,
Just
is it
one thing,
right?
Shashank, one thing,
Mhm.
right? I consciously don't use the term consulting
Mhm.
because we go beyond just consulting
It's
or
a more
advising.
deeper level engagement. Yeah.
We actually own the entire HR practices for you. So we implement, execute, we run. Our success measures are exactly what you would give to your HR team, to your HR head. So we actually own. We become a partner with you in
Right.
your journey. We are not just consulting here.
Got it. So if I talk about the target market, are you still focused on India or you're trying to look out for startups based in US also because they also have Silicon Valley and they are also in need of such services, I assume.
As of now, India. But in India, what we have done when we started off, our focus area was only startups. But now, slowly, we realize that there are other ecosystems where something like this can
Right.
be helpful. So we have now started looking at education as another vertical. And when I say education, I'm talking about large education institutes, private universities, school chains, and so on and so forth. I'm not talking about ed tech here. Third vertical, which we have started catering to is healthcare. Again,
Right.
within healthcare, I'm talking about hospital chains, diagnostic chains, and so on and so forth. Again, not talking about health tech here, by the way, because for me, health tech, ed tech is all in the startup ecosystem, by the way.
Right.
And the fourth vertical, which I personally feel extremely excited and passionate about, is the non-profits world, right?
Okay.
So, is non-profits again? While they are doing some massively meaningful work, impactful work, they a lot of times struggle with the right people practices because they don't have the resources to be able to drive those people practices. And we want to be the organization which has the capability and the ability to go in and help these organizations build their people practices. So non-profits is the fourth one. So these are the four verticals focused in India. I firmly believe there's enough and more work to be done in
Right.
India. So I'm not looking at going outside India just as yet. I think we would rather focus on India, create impact here, and partner with organizations to and contribute our bit towards building people practices here.
Got it, got it. And sort of, what's your take on role of AI in HR practices? Because there has been a lot of chatter ki HR might be a field that can be impacted by AI in future as well. So what's your thought process on it? Will it bring in efficiency? Will it maybe decrease the headcount that companies require? आपका क्या take है उस पे?
Yeah. See, again, obviously, I've been part of many of these conversations, and मेरा take थोड़ा सा philosophical है इसमें. आज से 20-25 साल पहले when शायद उससे ज्यादा हो गया, right? Almost 30 years back when internet was just coming in, right? Early 90s,
Right.
mid 90s, right? Same talk had happened that, roles will become redundant and so on and so forth and all of those things, right? It didn't happen like that. It's just that people who adopted those technology and then leverage those technology advancements which got made, became more efficient and became more what should I say, employable, let me put this way,
Right.
right? I think same thing is going to happen in AI. AI is a great tool. We leverage AI a lot in our work at ProGrowth. Okay, I won't deny that. But to say that AI is going to replace human beings or replace HR for that matter, I think taking it too far, right? And the reason I say that is because some of these pieces where an HR professional can be a real differentiator, for example, negotiation, right? For
Right.
example, grievance handling. For example, um, making sure that if there's somebody who needs to be there to convince candidates to join your organization, or settlement has to be done. You need emotions to be able to do that.
Right. Right.
And wherever there are emotions at play, I fundamentally believe it's human beings which are required, right?
Right.
uh, I may be wrong 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, but I am a firm believer that human beings are not going to get replaced. But yes, I do believe that people who adopt AI and use AI efficiently will become far more productive and far more employable than somebody who does not, right? So should you use AI? 100% yes. I am like not denying it, because you will be left behind if you don't, right?
Right.
So that's, I believe that what will get replaced here is people who are able to leverage AI and to make themselves more efficient, more productive, will definitely replace people who don't do that. That's where the game is going to get played.
Got it. I think this brings me to my last question, Saurabh. We have been part of lot of startups, early growth, hyper growth, Sari. So were there some times with the family moments that you missed in the past, and now you are proactively working on making sure that you will not miss those moments going forward? And your advice for someone who is of my age, maybe chasing hyper growth. So what are some of the things that they should be fixing on the family side as well, instead of just focusing on growth, growth, growth?
Yeah. So Shashank, I wrote about this some time back. Okay. I fundamentally believe that there are essentially three buckets, right? When you look at yourself, there are essentially three buckets, and I'm talking about a common person. I'm not talking about somebody who's born with a silver spoon and has been. I'm talking about normal people who come from, say, middle class, upper middle class, have had an education, looking to build a career for 20, 30 years, and all of that, right? Essentially, you have three buckets which you look at. You have your professional side, your career, right? You have your own self, right? And you have your family, right? To me, those are the three buckets. I can't think of a fourth bucket where you need to channelize, or where you end up channelizing your energy or time, right? You're
Right.
either thinking about your profession, your career, your work, you're thinking about your own self, or you're thinking about your family, right? इसके अलावा मुझे तीसरे के अलावा कोई चौथा कंपार्टमेंट मुझे तो नहीं दिखता.
Hmm.
Do you agree? Do you not? Tell me if there's another compartment if you look at your own self, because to me there are only these three buckets. Only these three compartments.
आई थिंक ब्रॉडली हाँ यही तीन है,
यही
इसके
तीन है,
अलावा
right?
तो और हाँ. हम्म.
Now, what happens typically, and when I look at myself, right? Typically, when you're starting off your career, right? Invariably, you index more heavily towards your career than
Right.
the other two. Invariably, right? Because of multiple reasons. Because you're starting off, you want to make a mark, you want to establish yourself, you want to, build a name for yourself. Let me put that. You want to be out there, be known for the career which you're building. You want to let me put that. So you want to stabilize in your career, right? You want to
Right.
succeed in your career which you have chosen, whatever career path you've chosen. So you spend heavily on that in terms of your time, effort, resources, right? Uh, and therefore, what happens is, because we only have 24 hours, right? When you are indexing heavily on one, which is your career, the other two takes a hit, whether it's your own health or it's your family and family time, right?
Right.
And when I look at myself, that's exactly what I did 15, 16 years back. When I was starting off, when I moved into startups, I was working literally 14, 15 hours a day. And now I'm not trying to kind of propagate that. I'm not trying to, romanticize that, all of that. But that's the fact of life. That's what I did, right? As a result, what happened? I did neglect my own health, right? I did neglect the fact that my family time. I did not spend as much time as I would possibly should, or would have wanted to. But that's a choice I made, right? Because I wanted to index. I believe that as you go through your career journey, you need to have the ability to figure out how much time, effort, resources you want to put into different compartments, right?
Right.
And that's your call. Okay, that's really your call. Now, today, if you really ask me, Shashank, I index heavily on the second and the third bucket, right?
Hmm.
I index heavily. I will not compromise on my time, my health, my fitness journey. I would not compromise on the time which I give to my daughter, Meher, or my rest of my family. Which also means that I'm very conscious about how much I want to grow ProGrowth People Solution, and at what cost, at what
Right.
pace, rather, right? That's a call you make, right? So how much water you want to, if you have 1 liter of water and you have to distribute amongst these three buckets, how much you want to put into each of these buckets, it's your call. But you
Hmm.
need to understand that you only have that much, right?
Hmm.
So if you pour heavily into one bucket, you will compromise on the others, right?
Right.
And you need to be comfortable about it. I'm not saying at the start of the career you should always index more on career, but all I'm saying is that invariably you end up doing that. I
Hmm.
meet a lot of youngsters nowadays, by the way, and I don't want to sound like I'm too old here, but the generation which is now coming in, they want to keep a balance between the three of these, or maybe at least the two, which is
Right.
themselves and the career. There's nothing wrong about it. Absolutely nothing wrong about it. Please go ahead and do it and figure out a way to manage that, knowing fully well that it is possible that someone else out there may be indexing more on the career side, on the profession, right?
Mhm.
And therefore may have a faster trajectory in their career and profession compared to you. Possibly.
Right.
You
Right.
should be comfortable with that.
Mm.
Right. So the
Right.
choice is yours. That's really how I would say it, right? So these are the three compartments. You decide where you want to index, how much, and then go for it. Knowing fully well that if you're doing that, somewhere some things may get compromised, and you should be comfortable with it because you're making that choice.
You should be owning up your choices,
Exactly.
basically.
That's really what it is. There's nothing, I honestly don't think, Shashank, there's anything wrong or right about indexing more on career. But I also feel now, having gone through my own fitness journey over last 4 or 5 years, that only thinking about your career and profession at the cost of your own health, I think
Mhm.
is taking it too far. Because ultimately what matters, if your health is not with you, even your career is gonna suffer.
Right, right. We have seen recent cases of heart attacks and all those things. So basically, health taking a hit, whereas your career was growing like anything. So I
Yeah,
think
doesn't
both of
make
these,
sense, right? Yeah.
right. Right. It was great interacting with you, Saurabh. Thank you so much for taking out time, and wish to meet you in person soon as well whenever I'm in Bangalore.
Thank you, Shashank. I really enjoyed my conversation with you and would love to stay in touch. We'll meet with you very soon, I'm sure. But all the very best for your journey as well.